Today on Locked On Red Wings, what blue liners could Detroit target as the trade deadline approaches?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast. Tuesday's episode of the Daily J, I did a surface level of analysis of how the Red Wings went from the last place team in 2020 to knocking on the door of the playoffs in 2024. I talked to Max Bultman of The Athletic, Shayna Goldman of The Athletic, and of course, Ken Cal, the people's announcer for the Detroit Red Wings on the radio. Give it a listen. It's a good one. Just go to wwjnewsradio.com to give that a listen and help me stay employed, as times are tough in radio every single day. But Scotty, we're going to talk about today the targets the Red Wings could go after at the deadline at the defensive position. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's episode. You know, this is probably the biggest area of need for the Detroit Red Wings from the season, from here until the end of the season, if they want to make any noise in the playoffs, not just get in, but make some noise. And there's three guys that I kind of, and they're not going to be a surprise to any people. I feel like it's the same situation as yesterday's. The names I bring up aren't going to be a surprise. They're hot commodities on the market in general. At least two of these guys are. And that would be Noah Hanifin, Radko Gudas, and Jakob Chychrun. Now, Noah Hanifin's kind of the prize of the NHL trade deadline altogether. He's a phenomenal two-way defenseman who can play both power play and penalty kill. He eats big minutes with the Calgary Flames, and he's young as well. He is a pending UFA, but he's a guy you trade for. You don't want to walk away at the end of the year. Do you think there's a fit here in Detroit for Noah Hanifin, and would it make sense for them to pursue him, Scotty?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be the one to say that acquiring Hanifin would be a bad move by the Detroit Red Wings. Certainly, I think there's a lot of factors at play here. I mean, we talk a lot about, right, I really was banging the drum yesterday on the fact that term matters a lot when determining value. But there's also the flip side of that coin, which is somewhat of an argument for anybody that's being moved at the deadline, depending on, you know, if they're young enough. But Hanifin just having turned 27 in January, you know, he's a guy where Calgary is aware that anybody who trades for him is going to look to extend him. So that may raise the value, you know, kind of swing the pendulum back up. Not that he was going to be cheap regardless, right? Like, this is obviously, as you pointed out, this is kind of like the prize possession if you're looking for blue line help at the deadline here. But, you know, to think that, like, it's only rental price, I'm not sure that's going to be the case with him, just because it's so painfully obvious that anybody who traded for him would only trade for him with the intention of an extension. But yeah, man, I would be obviously thrilled. I mean, this is a guy that, like you said, is two-way, is going to be sound defensively. Left shot that is already at double-digit goals so far this season. I mean, it's probably going to end with, you know, 15 to 20, somewhere in that range. I mean, yeah, over half a point a game out of your blue line. I think you would be, it would be, I don't know, difficult to find too many people, I guess, that would look at this and be upset about adding the talent. It just comes down to how high is the price tag going to be really at the end of the day.
Well, I feel like Noah Hanifin's one of those players that he would fit almost any single team's need,
right?
Because he's so he's a Swiss Army knife on the back end because of the fact that he can play in any situation. You mentioned it. He's got 11 goals on the season. He's over a half point a game. He's in the final year of a 4.95, so just shy of $5 million contract. So he's going to get a huge pay raise as a UFA, but he's 27 years old. He's so young, and he immediately comes in and is your second best defenseman. Like, no offense to Jake Wallman, but he comes in and he's immediately your second best defenseman. And whether it's on the top pair or on the second pair, he's going to immediately slide. We talk about that trickle down, right? It's going to move somebody who's on the second pair, be it Petrie or Sherratt, because remember, Sherratt can slide over to play right, down to the third pair. And it's going to make everyone better as consequence. And he's young enough to be part of this team's winning window at 27 years old. So he's one of those rare players that I'd be comfortable giving up assets for, because he makes your team better now and for the future. So, like, I don't know what the asking price is going to be for him. I mean, obviously the asking price is a first plus, but when it comes down to it on the deadline day, what he's going to go for is going to be very different. And plus, I don't really know what Calgary's doing, because Calgary's trading away Lindholm. They traded away Tanev, but now they're saying we're not going to trade away Markstrom because we don't want to, what kind of message is that going to send? And it's like,
brother,
what message are you sending?
I think that sentence is evergreen. I think that's an evergreen. You could probably say that at any day of the year for the last 3 years, and I think people would be like, "Yeah, no, good question. We don't really know." But yeah, I mean, to your point, I think that this guy is the kind of the prize of the deadline if you're looking to add a D-man, and again, young enough where it would be really exciting to add that and then get an extension done for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, he's third on the Flames in penalty kill minutes played. That's amongst forwards and defensemen. He's third on the team in penalty kill time on the ice. He's first on the team in 5-on-5. He is their number one defenseman, and he's third among defensemen on power play minutes. So he's like not the main, he's not the top two options, but he cycles himself in there as well. Like, he just does a little bit of everything. And if you want to slide on over, I'll share my screen here and show you guys the usage chart by comparison, because we compare everyone by a bar compared to Moritz Seider and Jake Wollman, and we just know already how steep of a usage they get, how difficult their usage is. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys so you can see. Obviously, you see Seider. All right, just refresh right now. That's cool. You see Seider and Jake Wollman all the way up here in the upper left-hand quadrant, and that is because they get the toughest deployments in quality of competition and the most defensive zone starts by comparison. And of course, this refreshed to just Detroit. I had it set up to be all of the teams earlier.
Helpful, isn't it?
It's real helpful. Let me refresh it this so you guys get just the defense on Calgary and Detroit. There we go. And you can see on Calgary, his quality of competition and defensive zone starts is still dwarfed by Seider and Wollman, but he's getting the toughest competition on the Calgary Flames and the toughest deployment on the Calgary Flames amongst all their defensemen. So you bring a guy like that into the Red Wings fold, and while he's being dwarfed by Seider and Wollman, he's getting pretty comfortably more difficult deployments than Sherratt and Petrie are. So you bring him in, and he makes life easier on Seider and Wollman and on Sherratt and Petrie because he can take that kind of workload. So he's just an all-around complete defenseman that the Red Wings could use. The problem becomes he's an all-around complete defenseman that every team in the NHL could use.
Correct.
Like, the only teams that are not going to want a guy of Noah Hanifin's caliber, obviously sellers aren't going to go for him, but just in a general sense are just absolute cellar dwellers whose windows are like 5-6 years from now. Like your Chicago's, although with Connor Bedard, who knows how quickly that window could open.
Yeah.
But Anaheim, the Sharks, for example, like those are the teams that are going to be out on him. But he's being the top guy that teams are going to be chasing, man. You might have to give up an arm and a leg. And while I'm comfortable giving up a lot for Hanifin, I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable giving up what some teams whose windows are now are going to be giving up.
Yeah, it's going to be a hefty price tag. Absolutely. It is not going to be cheap. The silver lining for the Wings specifically is if they even do kind of back up the dump truck and just kind of dump a bunch of assets into that trade, is that it would be under the assumption that an extension would come and he would be on your blue line for the next 3 to 6 years. So.
Absolutely. We're going to head to a quick break, and when we return, we'll talk a little bit about Jakob Chychrun and Radko Gudas as my other two guys that we are looking at for possible future Red Wings. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Going to talk to you guys today about Sleeper. It's well past the halfway point of the NHL season. In fact, the trade deadline is Friday, right around the corner. And regardless of where the Red Wings are currently in the standings, tied for first in the wild card, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Hey, Noah Hanifin, Jake Gensel, Pavel Buchnevich, Radko Gudas will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win on 100 times bet on sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Red Wings fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey on sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Also got to talk to you guys today about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to the IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some of that fun legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, to a registered broker dealer. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty,
I like how you said no cap in that one. That's why it's my favorite. I really like how it just makes Brian say no cap in the middle of it.
No cap. Just with a weird cadence to it. Radko Gudas is a guy that I actually have not seen trade rumors surrounding, but he's a guy that I kind of have a bias towards.
Let me just say there are a lot of rumors surrounding it as well.
Okay.
You are not. I have a lot of friends who are, as I've talked about before, who are Ducks fans and really intertwined with that. Late Arrivals pod, great kind of Ducks show. Obviously, that and Locked On Ducks. And yeah, there's certainly not alone in in talking about Gudas rumors.
Yeah, so Radko Gudas he signed a 3-year contract this last offseason with a full no trade clause this season. So he's going to be able to pick who he wants to go to, and a modified no trade clause the next 2 years. He's getting paid $4 million for the next 2 years as well. So you're going to have him for a couple years now. He is 33 years old, so that does give me pause. Is his age? But, given his age, despite his age and the team that he's playing on, I really like Radko Gudas' game. And I wanted Radko Gudas well over Justin Holl. In fact, you're paying Justin Holl $1 fewer million dollars a season to sit in the press box. Meanwhile, Radko Gudas is playing top pair minutes with, granted, a poor Anaheim Ducks team. He'd come here, probably play second pair minutes, but he brings a very specific need to the Red Wings on the back end, and that is, as they call it, sandpaper.
No, I'm going to be honest. When we started, show prepping and talking about the players we were going to focus in on, I was going to go on a little bit of a rambling session about Gudas and how kind of perfect I think of a fit he would be for the Detroit Red Wings. Gives you that physicality that so many people out there have. Dude, do you see your camera? Okay, it just fixed itself. That's crazy. It was the blurriest I've ever seen it for about 5 seconds. Radko Gudas, I think is legitimately a really, really good fit. And part of that, I think, has to do with just like the versatility in the lineup that you could use him in, right? Like you said, he could be a guy that you put on the second pair, but he could also be a guy that you kind of mix and match and push around to, I don't know, you find somebody that is currently on the blue line that you think matches up well with him. You try different stuff, kind of have that revolving door situation. Because what he brings is, like you said, so specific, that kind of sandpaper edge to him. He's a guy that no matter who he's playing with, he's going to be able to utilize his game. And I just think that there's a versatility about that that would be good. And obviously, again, I mean, with our blue line, it's not like he'd be the scratch. Like, you're talking about a guy that would be probably more nights than not on the second pair with us. And then, yeah, that contract situation makes it interesting too. Obviously, he's older, so it's not like this, perfect situation in terms of how much contract he has left. But if you're able to trade with him, or trade for him rather, you're talking about a guy who it's not a rental, who would be on this team for a few years.
Yeah, and the wild thing about Radko Gudas too is, like, he is a player who is getting, well, he's playing top pair minutes. I don't know for sure if he's playing on the top pair, but given what I was looking statistically, he's amongst the Ducks amongst the Ducks players getting the most ice time. He's second on the team at 5-on-5 ice time. He's second on the PK in ice time. That's everyone, including forwards. So he's getting like big time usage. Now, that deployment, according to, and pull up that graph again for you guys, that deployment for Radko Gudas is fairly even by comparison to like where Seider and Wallman sit, of course. No one's going to compare to those two. You can see it here. He's more along the lines of usage for Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie, but he's getting more defensive zone starts than those guys. And on top of that, you notice the color of those bubbles. Radko Gudas on the Anaheim Ducks, which is one of the worst teams in the league this season, on the most penalized team, which I'm sure he's helping, team this season, is a Corsi for relative, not just positive, but steeply positive with the Anaheim Ducks. And that's hard to achieve on a team that is as poor as they are. When he is on the ice, the shot attempts lean more towards the Ducks than they do any of their opponents, despite him being just a defensive defenseman more so than not. He doesn't really get a lot of power play minutes. So that is a really encouraging sign for me to see that. And I'm not basing my whole argument on, his Corsi 4 relative. But that helps encourage me that maybe I want this 33-year-old on a $4 million contract for 2 more years. I mean, that gives me pause. That amount of money you're paying him for his age and how many more years you have to, but for how well he's playing for the Ducks this season and the type of style he brings and how we saw it against the Panthers, you need somebody with that kind of cachet. Not to say that, like, Red Wings, Sherratt's obviously tougher to play against. Seider's obviously very tough to play against, but somebody who can just bully you like Radko Gudas could benefit the Detroit Red Wings. So, and I don't know, again, the term is going to up his value, and I'm not comfortable selling the farm for a guy of Radko Gudas' caliber. But if it comes down to this, right? Like, every single time we do a trade conversation, if the price is right, I wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. But of course, it's going to come down to what Gudas wants, because he's the one with the full team no trade clause.
Yeah, no, and that was going to be my next point. Is it takes 2 to tango with this one. This is not just going to be a straight up, you get the value and that's it. You got to make sure, obviously, that he wants to come here, or else this is all nullified. So at the end of the day, his decision making is going to determine quite a lot of where he ends up, and it might just be staying in Anaheim for all we know. Who we'll see, but yeah, man, I really think that, and I know a lot of people have their qualms with him, and he's laid some hits over the years and whatnot, but I think that the fit on this team would be next to perfect. And not that he's the best defenseman in the league. I'm not trying to make him anything more than what he is, but as far as fit goes, I think that this would be a really, really good one. And the long-term stuff doesn't scare me as much with him.
It's 3 years, right? By the end of the
2 years after this one for starters. But also on top of that, I think, like, style of play matters, right? Like, it's not like he's a finesse guy that is going into his mid-30s and you're like, oh man, if he loses a step, he's going to be toast or whatever. Like, no, he can, play physical hockey and hit people as long as the hockey IQ is still there and he's still, in good enough shape to play that physical brand. Like, he can kind of do this for the foreseeable future, hopefully. So, there's also an Yzerman connection about way long ago. Started his career obviously with Tampa. I don't know if that helps or hurts. I'm not sure what their relationship was, but
Yzerman also traded him. So
right, exactly. That's my point. So I don't know. I don't know where they kind of stand. And then obviously now, the Ducks have Pat Verbeek in their front office, run it tall in the shots. So there's kind of a connection there as well. So there's a few factors in there that kind of lead me to believe that wouldn't be the most ridiculous move or the most ridiculous kind of mock out there. But at the end of the day, to your point, it's all really he's the one with the full NTC this year, so it's going to come down to where he wants to play.
Yeah, and speaking of connections, there's another team that the Red Wings have connections with, the Ottawa Senators, and we'll talk about Jakob Chychrun as an option in segment 3. So stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because no matter how the last game went and anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim that $75 job credit before March 31st. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed you do.
Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, we got one more defenseman on the trade market we got to get to before I want to talk about possible internal solution. And I say that as if people aren't going to have an idea who I'm talking about. But Jakob Chychrun with the Ottawa Senators. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, but just so funny that the Red Wings, there's a potential there. The Red Wings could trade for a guy again that the Ottawa Senators brought in to take them over the edge. And now the Red Wings are going to poach them from the Senators while they try to go over the edge. So it's just ironic. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the idea, the narrative of it makes me chuckle. Jakob Chychrun having a pretty good season with the Ottawa Senators. He's got another year left on his contract at 25 years old. Guys, he feels so much older than 25. I would have sworn he was 32. But Jakob Chychrun at 25 years old is one more deal.
He played a full season at 18. That's why.
Yeah. By the way, that draft pick that picked Jakob Chychrun with the Arizona Coyotes was the draft pick the Red Wings sent when dumping Pavel Datsyuk's contract to the Coyotes. So Correct. that was a Red Wings original draft pick. He's got another year at $4.6 million. He's got a 10-team no trade list. And this season with the Ottawa Senators, he's got 31 points in 59 games played, 9 goals, 22 assists. He's technically a two-way defenseman, but he definitely leans. I would call him a Shane Gostisbehere that's better at defense, is probably because he definitely leans more offensive oriented. He is second amongst defensemen in power play minutes, and he's first on the team in 5-on-5 minutes. So he kind of has slid in there as a top pair role with the Ottawa Senators. I would take him.
Yeah, I mean, sure, man. That's like the reoccurring theme here. Like we're picking, the cream of the crop, today and yesterday in terms of, the positions that we're looking to add. And so, yeah, I mean, I very much would take him. I know it's probably the shortest of the conversations we have today, but yeah, I mean, obviously this would be another guy that if he was added tomorrow, we'd be thrilled about.
Yeah, and so the one thing, and like every one of these players has like a different nuance to them. Like if you go and get Noah Hanifin, you're getting Noah Hanifin to alleviate the pressure on Seider, Wollman, get a bona fide long-term solution in the top 4. And I think Chychrun could be a long-term solution in the top 4, but you have to realize as well what his role is. Like I said, he's a more well-versed Shane Gostisbehere in my eyes. He can play better defense, and he does play better defense, but primarily you're going to use him in an offensive role, which doesn't help take a lot of stress off of Seider and Wollman in the back end. It does up your offensive output from the back end, but like for the example to how the Senators are using him this year. And I know that's not a great metric with how poorly they're playing. And it's partly, man, they got some good defense. I cannot understand. I just don't get why the Senators are bad year in and year out. They got some great defensemen on that team, but that's a conversation for a different day. You can see here, Chychrun gets bulk majority of his defensive zone, his shifts starting in the offensive zone from the blue line because of his specialties. He's a power play specialist as well. So he's not going to help alleviate a lot of the challenges on Seider and Wollman, but he's a long-term solution at providing offense from the back end, and he can play pretty good minutes as well. He's not, whereas Gudas, again, is more defensive oriented. You're going to play him on the penalty kill. He's going to eat big minutes. Noah Hanifin can do both, eat big minutes. They're all specialized and nuanced in different ways. It's just about what your emphasis is on the back end, but any three of these would be a good fit for the Red Wings and a good fit for any team, really.
Yeah, and that's why they're three of the bigger names kind of on the market, especially obviously completely just lost my train of thought, especially obviously Chychrun and Hanifin. I would be fine with that. Like, obviously, I would have no issue with that addition, right? I mean, again, we're really splitting hairs here. I think the difference in play style between the three is, like you said, really the biggest conversation. So,
yeah, I mean, if I'm trying to rank who I would want, I mean, obviously Noah Hanifin would be first.
I would do it in order that we talked about it.
Yeah, it's tough. I could make an argument for Chychrun over Gudas just simply because of age factor. Like if you acquire Chychrun,
you want to can extend him, then that's easily a game changing type of thing for sure.
But with any three of these players, because of the fact that Gudas has term left, and you would want to keep Chychrun and you would want to keep Hanifin, you'd probably have to give up a little bit more because there's an understanding there that that's the idea. The trade doesn't go through probably without a deal kind of being made already. So all three of these guys would be a huge addition to the Detroit Red Wings, but the two that would take the most pressure off of Seider and Wollman in the defensive zone and help them free themselves up for what they can do best would be Gudas and Hanifin, most likely. Anyway, Scotty, there's one more person we got to talk about because there is a possibility, and Derek Lalonde kind of, I don't want to say he hinted at it because he really didn't. I could be digging too much into this, but the Red Wings the media asked Derek Lalonde the other day kind of about the Griffins, because at the time they were running that long point streak, I think 17 games, recently snapped. And they asked him about Simon Edvinsson as well, and he said he's close, and that those guys in Grand Rapids are playing really good hockey, and that he said something along the lines of, I guess he did hint, that the solution, the big-time trade deadline acquisition the Red Wings could make could be an internal one. And obviously that's all eyes look to Simon Edvinsson, who's absolutely tearing it up in Grand Rapids to the point like where he's making decisions because he's so comfortable that are, not good, because he's just dominating so much that he's like, this is too easy for me. So I think that Simon Edvinsson is an obvious solution for the Red Wings internally to improving their defense post deadline. But the question then becomes is, how do you make room for him?
That is the $1 million question. Obviously, you can dump Hall somewhere, right? You can trade him somewhere, dump his salary, and that can give you on paper just like the roster spot that you're going to need. But then you have to talk about playing time. It's one thing to just clear a spot so that he can get on the roster. It's another one to find, legitimate, consistent playing time. Sans Hall, so we'd remove him. Of the six, where does Edvinsson consistently get playing time right now? Obviously, it's not Wollman or Seider. I don't think it's Petrie or Sherratt. I think that's pretty solidified your second pair here. And I mean, Ghost has his role, obviously has been upticking in production and point value lately. I don't think they're about to start healthying Ghost, and so that kind of leaves Oli Mata, who has been playing pretty well the last couple of weeks. So not that I'm advocating for him to like stay down or say, there's no room, we got to like keep punting or just keep waiting. Not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out that it's, I think, a little bit more of a difficult conversation than people realize to find legitimate playing time, unless you just want to go, get Mata or Petrie, start scratching one of them and just start giving Edvinsson, 18 to 20 a night and call it a day. And if you have that confidence in him, then fair enough. If the organization does, then I'm going to trust the org. But I don't think it's just like this slam dunk to really easily find minutes. That's all.
Yeah, so I think if you call Simon Edmondson up, you're not calling him up to give him 10 minutes a night. I think
I
you're
agree
calling.
with you.
And so if
That's
the
my
Red
point.
Wings make that decision, they're going to have a game plan on getting him on the ice, and I
For
think he
sure.
slides immediately in to your second pair. And if that's the case, I mean, I think the best pair. It sounds so strange saying this, but I think the best person to pair with Simon Edmondson is Ben Sherratt.
Yeah, he played with him last year.
He played with him last year. He's had a really nice bounce back year. I give, we talk about, he's a flawed defenseman, Ben Sherratt, but he's been a lot better this season. And that's at times in spite of his defensive partner in Jeff Petrie. But I still think Jeff Petrie could be an effective third pair defenseman or a seventh D man. So
For sure.
if Steve Yzerman truly lives by the philosophy of if a guy earns his spot, he earns his spot, then you're not afraid of waiving Justin Hull or buying Justin Hull out in the offseason, which, by the way, I've done the math. That's 4 years at 1.3 million, something I'd be very comfortable doing.
Yeah. No,
or even
that's
using
not the issue. The issue isn't finding a spot for him. It is Justin Hall, obviously.
It is Justin Hull, and then or even making a trade at the deadline where you try to find a partner to take Hull and retain salary. Because on the flip note, if you can get it, if you retain 50%, okay, it's 1.5 over the next 2 instead of 1.3 over the next 4. And maybe you send them like a 6th round, 5th round pick in return to a seller that just could use a guy for continuity's sake the next couple of years. I mean, there are options there for the Red Wings if they want to. And Lalone did, talk about their biggest acquisition could be an internal one in the offseason, or at the deadline. Like, this makes sense for the Detroit Red Wings to do it if they truly believe the philosophy of if a guy earns his spot, he earns his spot. Of course, the risk you run with calling up a rookie at this time of the year, and we saw the Devils do it last year with Luke Hughes after the University of Michigan season ends, the risk you run is a defensive lapse a rookie makes that maybe a veteran wouldn't. But I find it hard to believe that Simon Edmondson is any worse than some of the veterans that are on this roster right now with how he's performing in Grand Rapids. But that's just, it's such a complex situation because you also have to take into account how Grand Rapids is playing, their playoff push, keeping those guys together. But I mean, what really matters is what the Red Wings are doing, and they're trying to make the playoffs. And if Simon Edmondson is a clear upgrade in the coaches and the management and the coaching staff's eyes, that's a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk to bring up Simon Edmondson.
No, yeah, it's all just about game planning him consistent minutes. And if, again, I think if it's, I agree with you where I think the roster spot is created by getting rid of Justin Hall, and then the playing time spot is created probably most likely by replacing Petrie. I think that's probably the what the game plan would be there. But yeah, it's all about confidence in him, and I think the trade deadline will obviously determine a lot of that.
Yep. So the Red Wings hit 32 minutes in game preview. Red Wings play the Colorado Avalanche in Colorado to kick off their 4-game road swing. And who would have thought the Avalanche are still very good at hockey?
Yeah, in the week that it's been since we last played them, they're still really good, believe it or not. So
yep, they just beat the Blackhawks 5-0, which is not really a surprise, although they did lose 5-1 to the Predators, who are red hot. The game before that, they beat the Blackhawks 5-0 in back-to-back games. That's actually kind of funny. But the McKinnon over 100 points now. They're the Avalanche. Like, how much of a preview do you guys need? Like, this is just one of the elite teams in the league again. But the Red Wings beat them at home.
Yeah.
So it
head-to-head record this year 1-0-0 for the Detroit Red Wings against the Avs.
But obviously, the big thing here is the Red Wings don't have Dylan Larkin.
No Dylan Larkin.
That's going to be a challenge for the Detroit Red Wings. But, if you're serious about wanting to make the playoffs, this is where the depth that the Red Wings have gotten, it needs to prove its mettle, needs to prove its worth. And no better test of that mettle than against the Colorado Avalanche, who won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago in 2022. So
100%, man. Yeah, this is where the depth is really going to show. I'm really fascinated in how the top 6 looks. You're gonna have to rely on some of the big guns there. Obviously, like a Cat hot streak would be really timely. That'd be really cool. But yeah, you're gonna have to rely on the big guns and the depth, obviously, to kind of carry you through these next couple of weeks. And unfortunately, that comes at the time when you play the Avs. So
1C JV, let's go, baby.
Let's see it.
All right, Scotty, you got any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about who amongst these three or anyone else that we didn't mention you'd love to see the Red Wings acquire at the deadline, or if none at all. Stand pat. That's probably most likely what they're going to do given their situation. So let us know your thoughts below, and we'll be back with a game recap of the Colorado Avalanche game. Same time, same place. Your team every day.
Every day.